Hi, Chris DeLeon here of HobbyGameDev.com with another short video reply to a question that I received through @HobbyGameDev on Twitter. Now, unlike my previous Twitter replies that I do through a short video, I'm not going to show the tweet in this case because it's one of these questions that really, even though it affects a ton of beginners, a ton of people who are just getting into game making, comes up so frequently, I think maybe it comes up so frequently that sometimes it annoys or frustrates people who've been doing it for a while, almost as if everybody was just born knowing the answer somehow. But clearly nobody was. Everybody has to have this explanation at some point. I'm going to take my shot at it today of trying to make a case for what's going on. So without belaboring it any further, so the question is, when I share my gaming ideas with someone, can I have some way to protect my gaming ideas from being stolen? And okay, so there's sort of there's a technical answer and then there's a practical, real answer. Now, technically, yes. I mean, so that's what intellectual property is all about. That's what copyright, which is automatic because of the Berne Convention. It's what trademark, which can cost thousands of dollars to get over a certain idea or character or logo, is about. It's about what patents are. If it's an innovation in an algorithm or an approach to solving a problem in an innovative way that you think gives you a competitive advantage, ideas are protectable. And I, having been making games now for about half my life, I've sold game design documents, a couple of them, and it's a thing that can be done. However, again, so that's the technical answer. If you're just getting started making games, those ideas do not have, in most cases, market value. Basically, what happens is the necessary implementation of an idea, all the things that have to happen to consider whether an idea is going to work, at what kind of cost, at what kind of scale, what are the logistics, what are really the deeper details of it. Those are the things where there's some value around it. So the reason I was able to sell those, like I said, game design documents in a couple of isolated instances is because I had been making games long enough that I could really spell out in deeper detail how and why it should be done this way as opposed to that way, and what's involved, and how many people we need, and what the logistics were tied to it, as opposed to, if you have like an idea for a character, that's not the same thing as having really done something with it. More often than not, the implementation of the idea is worth a whole lot more than the high-level concept of it. So, if someone had once dreamed of, it'd be cool if we landed on the moon, that person, of course, deserves little to no credit when hundreds or thousands of government scientists work together with professional astronauts, people who spend their whole careers training, their lives studying science to be able to land on the moon. Likewise, it's something that, again, experienced game developers will sometimes kind of mock a little bit, and I like to use the example of that. The neat thing about Mona Lisa isn't that it's a painting of a lady, right? That's not what gives it value. It's the execution. And so generally speaking, the execution is where the idea gets value. Now, because of that, oftentimes, like early on, you shouldn't be so worried about protecting the ideas nearly as much as you should be worried about developing the ideas by feeling free to discuss them with others, by being just really out there with it. And, there's a classic quote of, if the idea is really any good, you got to, shove it down people's throat. For the most part, other people have their own ideas. If other people have game-making capabilities, they've got their own thoughts about characters and stories and mechanics that are higher on their priority list of things to do next than to borrow the ideas of someone who's just getting started. And even if they did, if they ran with it, if it's a high-level concept, they'd probably take it in a whole different direction. There's lots of games out there which, frankly, are the same high-level concept, but some of them do really well, some of them don't, and it all comes down to matters of game feel and execution and polish and art style and aesthetic and all kinds of other things that aren't just a conceptual thing, but also a sheer matter of skill and the ability to implement and the ability to pull it off within a certain budget and a certain time frame and a certain distribution pipeline, all the networking connections, marketing and challenges, and getting an audience tied to doing that are non-trivial contributions to the big picture. So, I would, like I say, technically speaking, yes, there are ways to protect the ideas. In fact, copyright's automatic. But as a beginning game developer, that's almost not a useful bit of information to know or to look into. Now, I do have an entry on Hobby Game Dev about intellectual property. I'm not a lawyer, and it shouldn't be constituted as lawyerly advice, but I've dealt enough with making games that I've also had to deal with lawyers enough times to have at least some idea of some high-level summaries of how the different intellectual property mechanisms work, if nothing else, to hopefully guide your search or maybe lead to some questions you might bring up with a real lawyer, an actual lawyer, when looking into these matters. But primarily, like I say, if you're a new game developer, focus on doing something with the idea, or at least developing it. Often it's also something where we don't really have more ideas, I find, until we do something with the ideas we have, or at least we get them out of us. And sometimes someone will get stuck to a single idea for a long period of time. They just keep thinking about it and thinking about it until they get it out of them, whether by doing something with it or at least, heck, talking about it, writing it down. It just blocks them from getting other ideas. And you don't want to be someone who has only a single idea. You want to have lots of ideas, which is going to allow you to kind of go back and maybe remix, pull some parts from, put them back together. You just want to be able to move your thoughts forward, and that can help you to articulate it. You have to talk about it with other people. They'll ask you questions. They can relate it to other things that maybe you didn't see the connection to something else, but it's going to help you further develop your idea. Oftentimes, the people I find who are most free and comfortable talking about their ideas as video game developers wind up having more ideas, and increasingly, by at least some metric, better ideas as they progress, from increasingly kind of sculpting their approach to thinking about game development based on the experience and knowledge and opinions of others in a way that, if you just live inside your head, it's very easy to kind of like think it seems great. But until you try to, like I say, when you say it out loud to somebody else, you'll start to pick your own holes in it, and you'll start to identify through conversation ways to improve, refine, and hopefully do something with the ideas, because that's where it's really going to have value. The concept of Quake, of there's zombies and there's teleporters and there's shotguns, isn't Quake. The idea itself is pretty silly. The idea of most arcade games I like, Bubble Bobble, first in my queue, being some dinosaurs that blow bubbles, that capture monsters, pop the monsters, and then eat fruit that come out of the bubbles. It's kind of nonsense. And a million people could try to do that idea. It's going to all come out differently. That in itself isn't a really protectable idea, or it's not worth looking into intellectual property devices to protect. But the game itself is absolutely worth something that helped Taito as a company and the game industry as a whole, and of course got me interested in video games at an early age. So do something with the ideas, even if it's write a comic, even if it's write a short story, and that's going to help you refine the ideas. That itself is more protectable. But as a beginner, like I say, I'd say a lot less about how do I keep the idea from getting stolen, and focus much more on how can I develop it further, and just be free and welcoming to talking to people about it. Maybe you'll find yourself some collaborators. But at the end of the day, like I said, the kind of people you might be worried about stealing your idea, there's so much work involved in really putting an idea to good use, and there's so much detail. The devil's really in the details for these things, that the stealing isn't something to worry about, but just getting stuck in your own head. So I think I'm repeating myself at this point. So I'll call it a end of the video for now. But thanks for the question. Like I say, I know it affects a lot of developers who are new to getting into making games, and something I just feel like want to take my shot at trying to explain my case for. Because I think it's one of these questions that too many experienced game developers turn their nose up to, or don't bother to address, or just feel like everyone should just know this somehow. So it's Chris DeLeon for HobbyGameDev.com. There's, like always, tweet me questions at HobbyGameDev. I'm here to try to help you all learn how to make games, or make games better if you're already doing it, or connect you to more collaborators. I just want to help people make the games that they want to make. So it's Chris DeLeon for HobbyGameDev.com. Thanks for following along, and I'll have some more content for you soon. Bye-bye.